Francis Roy Plomley, OBE, was an English radio broadcaster, producer, playwright and novelist. Early life. Plomley was born in Kingston upon Thames, Surrey, son of a pharmacist, and was educated at King's College School, Wimbledon. On leaving school he worked first briefly for an estate agent, then for a London advertising agency, then in publishing. His original aim was to be an actor, and he did secure very minor parts in a number of films, but he soon drifted into broadcasting, coming to public notice as an announcer and later producer for the International Broadcasting Company, starting on Radio Normandy in April 1936 and moving on at the end of that year to the IBC's Paris-based station, Post Parisien. Between mid-1937 and late 1939 he was involved in writing and production, traveling back and forth between these two IBC stations in France and the company's offices and studios in London, while also presenting the variety program Radio Normandy Calling, recorded on location in theatres at UK seaside resorts and regularly beating the BBC in audience ratings. World War II. This part of his career came to an abrupt end when commercial broadcasting from the continent was brought to a halt by World War II. Plomley and his new wife stayed on in Paris, only narrowly escaping back to the UK via a circuitous route through the chaos and panic of the fall of France, losing all the possessions in the process, as German occupying forces approached the French capital in June 1940. Desert Island Discs. Then, in 1941, he devised the BBC radio series Desert Island Discs. It was created on a cold November evening whilst Plomley was contemplating ideas and deciding whether to retire to bed or not, in the cottage he was living in at the time at Little Bushy Lane, Bushy, Hertfordshire. He wrote to Leslie Perrone, who was in charge of popular record programs. He had a favourable reply, and so, in his little back bedroom study, he set out his ideas with the names of personalities to be invited to participate. In those days of World War II, every BBC radio show was scripted by Plomley and submitted for censorship. In January 1942, the first of a series of 8 weekly programs was broadcast. Each show consisted of an interview with a celebrity, interspersed by the guest's choice of music. His contract was renewed for a further 15 shows. In the end he presented 1,791 editions of the program stretching over 43 years. Its success was attributed to his skill as an interviewer and to his meticulous research. Plomley was succeeded as presenter by Michael Parkinson, then by Sue Lawley, and most recently by Kirsty Young. Desert Island Discs is the second longest running radio program in the world, and it is still running. Until late September 2009, unlike many other BBC radio programs, Desert Island Discs was unavailable for listen again on the BBC website. This was because, when Roy Plomley devised the program, he was a freelance producer, and it had been argued therefore, that the format rights of the program belonged to him rather than to the BBC. At his death, those rights passed to his widow, and the BBC were subsequently unable to negotiate the right to include Desert Island Discs in the Listen Again offering. It was announced on the 27th of September 2009 that an agreement had been reached with the family as to payment of royalties, and it would be available via a player. Other work. Plomley's broadcasting career was not restricted to Desert Island Discs. He also compiled and presented several feature programs and was the chairman of BBC Radio's game show Many a Slip from 1964 to 1979, and a participant in such panel games as Does the Team Think? Also in BBC Radio. He also anchored Round Britain Quiz in 1961. For television he produced Dinner Date with Death in 1949, claimed to be the first UK film made for TV, and in the same year shared We Beg to Differ on BBC Radio, transferring with it to BBC Television in 1951. He also read the screenplay for the 1953 film The Bleg Slept Here. Plomley was awarded the OBE in 1975. He was chairman of the Radio and Television Writers Association from 1957 to 1959, and was voted BBC Radio Personality of the Year in 1979. He published 16 stage plays and 1 novel. He was posthumously inducted into the Radio Academy's Hall of Fame. Plomley died in London from pleurisy in 1985, aged 71, and is buried at Putney Vale Cemetery.